Hello everybody, this is Chick Wilfong, and I know Pancho Villa. If you're interested in caps or apparel, go to www.chickwilfong.com and click on the store. You know, I'm always interested in good country humor. It's the best in my opinion, and the reason it is because most times it's clean and funny. It doesn't have to be dirty to be funny. And this, of course, is one that's just like that. It came to me this morning from David Farmer, and David, I greatly appreciate your contribution. It's about a family in Tennessee that farm for a living. The last name's Pennicuff, Mr. and Mrs. Clarence Pennicuff. Mrs. Pennicuff had raised 8 strapping children and come to find out that she felt like once again she might be in a family way. Well, she had the country doctor come by the house and examine her, and sure enough, she was pregnant again. And the doctor told her, this time, Mrs. Pennicuff, we had a little bit of trouble on your 8th child, so why don't we just have you come to the hospital to deliver this child? And that way, if there's any problems, we'll be right there and can take care of them. And Mr. Clarence, he didn't like that idea of the extra cost, but he was convinced that that was the right thing to do. And so, sure enough, a few months later, one morning, a couple hours before daylight, Mrs. Pennicuff woke up with some horrible labor pains, and she woke her husband up. Mr. Clarence got to pick up. Mrs. Pennicuff got dressed, and off to the hospital they went. Well, sure enough, in a little bit, the doctor arrived, and yes, Mrs. Pennicuff, you are about to give birth to this baby. Let's get you back in the delivery room, and shoot, we'll have you back out here in time for breakfast. Mr. Pennicuff, would you like to come with us? He says, oh, no, I might see something in there change my life forever. I believe I'll stay in this waiting room. So sure enough, Mrs. Pennicuff goes back to the delivery room, delivers her baby. They get her back out into a regular hospital room, and doctor comes in to see her, says, hey, you're healthy, baby's healthy, but I'd like to keep you overnight for observation just because you're advanced in years to be giving birth to a child. Not a problem. Of course, Mr. Clarence, he took some convincing, but they finally got him convinced, and in a little bit, they wheeled in lunch for Mrs. Pennicuff, and she ate what she wanted out of it, and Mr. Clarence ate the rest. Supper time, Mrs. Pennicuff ate what she wanted out of it. Mr. Clarence ate the rest. Next morning at breakfast, Mr. Clarence went out to smoke a cigarette that morning, and they brought in Mrs. Pennicuff's breakfast, and she ate what she wanted out of it. And about that time, the nurse walked in and says, Mrs. Pennicuff, before we release you, we need to get a urine sample from you. So she handed Mrs. Pennicuff the little cup. Mrs. Pennicuff went in there and gave her the sample, came back out and set it right there on that little table, and went back in and went to putting her clothes on. In the meantime, Mr. Pennicuff come in from smoking his cigarette. Mr. Clarence looked over and he says, well, she didn't finish that breakfast, so he finished it for her. In just a few minutes, doctor come in, examined her, told her he was going to release her. They'd be in with her paperwork in just a few minutes. In the meantime, hospital administration come in to see him and said, look, we've got a survey we'd like you to fill out about your hospital visit, if you don't mind. We have just a few questions we'd like to ask. The Pennicuff said, no problem. Said, well, how was the disposition of the hospital staff? Great. No problem at all. Well, how was the cleanliness of your room? Was your accommodations all right? Great. No problem. Well, what about the food? Was it okay? Mr. Clarence said, great. No problem, save one. Said, that has got to be the nastiest apple juice I have ever drank in my life. And said, would you know it? Said, there was a great big black hair floating in mine. Y'all have a great day.